Morning everyone, welcome to our small footprint. It is Thursday and I don't know whether this is a run on from another video or whether it's the beginning of one, so we will just intro like it could be either. It is, as I said, it's Thursday morning. We're still doing the food prep and everything else from the monthly grocery haul. Things have definitely been a little bit skewed this month with the 10-week groceries and coming back on the Sunday, and I'm still getting there. So first thing I'm going to do today though is I'm going to bake some sandwich bread, and then I'm going to run the dehydrator with some of the mushrooms that need to be used up in the fridge. That's the plan at the moment, so let's get started on that. Alright, so I'm just going to do sandwich bread. I've warmed the kettle a little bit because I've got some coconut cream out of the fridge. Flies today are really bad, and one of the things that got missed in my grocery pickup, so one of the things that I do delivery is the fly spray automatic sprayer inserts that go in these, and I have them pointed away from the bench, but just it mists in the air, and it keeps the flies really reduced. But I ordered 6 of them, which is enough to put in the various, sometimes we run one in the bathroom, sometimes one in the house, sometimes one in the kitchen, wherever they need to be run. And I didn't get any of them. So I cannot seem to control the flies at the moment at all. So anyway, that is part of an outdoor kitchen. So let's get dough on. Let me find my dough hook. And we'll get that going. And then while that's going, I'm going to grab the container for it and the mushrooms out of the fridge. Alright, dough is done. It's pretty wet, but it's fine because I'm going to be shaping it into loaf tins anyway. So the water was probably just that little bit too warm for it, but as I've been saying lately, there's certain levels of comfort with dough that you have to find your own level of. I can't find the spray oil, of course. And I'm super comfortable with handling wet doughs, so I'm comfortable that this will be doable. It's a little bit tacky, but not excessively. Spray oil. And we'll get this in here and covered to proof. And this will be 3 loaves of bread. I could make rolls with it if I want to. I'll have a look at it when it's proofed and see how it feels. I don't know what else I'm doing at the moment with that, so I'm just going to leave that there rather than send it over to the sink. And we'll put that aside to proof. Alright, I was getting mushrooms out and then I got sidetracked, so I was trying to 3D print some stuff and it keeps on sticking, getting caught on the filament, and I'm over it. Alright, so let's sort that out and I'll grab those mushrooms. Alright, I'm also going to try, so I've got the tray with all the zucchini grates in it that I'm going to run for a little bit longer while I run this, because it just wasn't dehydrated quite enough. But what I'm going to do is try some nice thin slices as well and see how these go. I got comments about using a mandolin for the apples and stuff the other day, and totally. I don't think I've got a proper mandolin at the moment, but I do have the slicer in the Thermomix. No good for apples, the apples are a bit wide, but things like this I could easily do it with. But it's a lot of effort for a small batch, and I just want to do a single tray of these slices just to see how they dehydrate in comparison to the shreds that I did. So I'm just going to fill this tray with little hand cut, mostly uniform slices. I do have decent knife skills, so that does help. But I'm just curious as to whether the slices actually dehydrate better than the shreds because they're separated rather than being in clumps. But I did squeeze the other ones to get a lot of water out of it, which I thought would help with getting it to dehydrate quicker, but I don't know. We're experimenting. I've never really done much in the way of dehydrated vegetables before because when I did have a dehydrator, when I lived on mains power, I still had children, and most of the time I just did treats. I just did things like fruit and that sort of stuff because it was the choice of things to do with the dehydrator sort of thing. So veggies are a bit of a new thing. So I've just managed to put basically a whole small zucchini on a tray, and we'll give it a go. Now, if I hadn't, like, mind you, I have discovered since that my kids adore dehydrated vegetables, so I'm actually going to sprinkle these with a little bit of salt before I put them in, because the kids they've been eating the little shreds straight out of the dehydrator. So anyway, we'll put that tray in, and then we'll start on the mushrooms. Now, I don't know how necessary the mesh is if I'm just going to slice them like this, but at the same time they do shrink a lot, so I may as well use it because it comes with the dehydrator, and that is awesome that I have enough to pretty much do the whole every tray. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to slice these up and get them in there. I am going to have to use these up. I do freeze them. You can't like eat them as sliced mushrooms once you defrost them because the texture is kind of gross. I'm not that I'm a mushroom person anyway, Darryl is though, but they work fine in pasta sauces or in bolognese or things like that because I'm just adding them as a filler. So I can use them from frozen in a variety of different things, just not as a fry up in a pan. And Darryl does love mushrooms. The problem is that if he eats too much, they cause stomach upset, which they will with anyone. It's to do with the water that they hold. They draw to the belly, things like that. So had to go a little bit light on them just to make sure that there was none of those issues. So I'm just going to slice them up, fill the trays, and get them in the dehydrator as well. All right, so as per usual, my battery might not have kicked in until just then, my mic. As per usual, we are making decisions on the fly because that's my forte. The dough is just about ready. I will give it another 10 minutes. But because I have these mushrooms here, I am going to make, I might make beef stroganoff for dinner tonight to use some of these up. I've got that rump in the fridge, so I'll cut some of that up to use as stir-fry style stroganoff. But something else that I need to make is my canned pasta sauce. Now, I tend to pressure can my pasta sauce, and then that way I don't have to worry about the ratios of anything. So I'm going to start cutting stuff up, and then we'll talk through, my thoughts on all of that. And we'll do a really big pot of pasta sauce up because the pasta sauce that I make can be used as a base for so many things. So that's just fantastic to have on the shelf. So if you're, hang on, let me get some onions. So flies are just, today. Anyway, if you are water bath canning a pasta sauce, then you have to be aware of your ratios. We discussed that with something else, the pizza sauces. So it works out as something along the lines of 7 cups of tomatoes per cup of non-acidic ingredients, right? Some of these onions are a bit gross. Now, because I don't want to be that precise, basically is what it comes down to, I don't want to have to worry about that. What I do is I pressure can my pasta sauce, and then that way it doesn't really matter. So I make it to taste and I pressure can it. Now you do have to be aware that when you pressure can tomato products, sometimes they can taste burnt depending on what you're doing. So like I'm not a huge fan of there's a meatballs in passata recipe that you can pressure can, and I always found that the tomato-based sauce in that tasted a little burnt because you're cooking it for 90 minutes with the meatballs and stuff in it. But when we're talking this, we're talking you can it, it's a plane flying over. That's what the dog's barking at, because, you know, they can hear him. So when you're pressure canning a somewhat made up recipe within the scope of what's allowed to be pressure canned, you need to pressure can it for the ingredient that takes the longest. This bag of onions really has a few. Ooh, that one's really gross too. You have to, man, let me finish a sentence. You need to can it for the ingredient that takes the longest. So onions and mushrooms, I believe, are going to be the things that would take the longest in this, which are 40 to 45 minutes. I'll double check that. Which means that my pasta sauce will need to be pressure canned for 40 to 45 minutes because of those ingredients. Now, that's how, when you're water bath canning pasta sauce, it still takes 40 minutes. So for me, I don't find it that much of an issue to pressure can it, because it's not like it's any shorter time. It's probably slightly longer because it takes a bit longer to come up to pressure, but it's not, yeah, it's really not any different, and it gives me the opportunity to basically just cook it exactly how I want and to taste. So all I'm doing is dicing stuff up roughly, because we will puree it before we can it anyway, because that's how we prefer it. You can leave it chunky if you want, but my kids are more a fan of a smooth sauce. So I've got, what did I end up with here? 3 onions. We'll grab more. 4 onions I might have ended up with. I wanted about 6 to 8. So I'm not entirely sure how much tomato I've got in jars, mind you, in tins, because I couldn't get the really big. Costco sells these 2.5 kilo tins, a 3-pack of them, which is what I normally use for this, and they haven't had them the last couple of times I've been. I've got one left on the shelf, I think, and then I've just got the 800 gram tins to use. So we will see, but I think this was 4 onions, so I'm going to grab a couple more. Oh my god, the flies. I'd have to grab one of the battery operated fans, which I normally only have to use in summer to keep the flies away, but they are just really, really bad at the moment. Alright, so we've got those in there now. I'm going to use some celery. I want to keep some of this celery for, and it hasn't been stored very well in the fridge, so some of it needs to be discarded. I also need to give it a wash, but I want to use some of this celery for sausage rolls. I'm going to make sausage rolls later in the week. So I'm going to pull all the leafy bits off, and they will go in the freezer for stock. Any really gross bits come off, but the leafy bits can go in the freezer for stock. And then we will. Oh, got a worm. I'm going to give this a wash. And I'll put some in the, as I said, some will go in wrapped in foil in the fridge, because that's the best way to store it, to use cooked up with sausage rolls. Alright, so let's grab, we'll leave 1, 2, 3, maybe those 4 for sausage rolls, and I'll just cut up the rest of it. And again, I'm just going to chunk it because I'm going to puree up everything afterwards anyway. In the pan. I could, of course, grate this all up in the Thermomix, but I'm just short on space at the moment, and I've got the dehydrator running, and I'm going to puree it up anyway. So celery, we're going to cook this off in a little bit of oil to soften all these veggies before I add the tomato. Just a little bit of oil for the bottom of the pan. We don't want too much because we're going to can it. Alright, sort that out. So we're going to do some mushrooms. Now, I'm not sure what sort of a ratio of mushrooms I want to use. I'm curious about weight of mushrooms. So, like, you know. Alright, so that's 500 grams of mushrooms. So that's what I'm going to go with. And I'm just going to roughly chop these as well. Alright, we've got about 10 big carrots here. Again, I'm just going to dice them up roughly. Into chunks. This is going to cook for a few hours before it gets canned, and it'll probably end up cooking for a few hours and then letting it chill overnight and canning it tomorrow, because I'm just not going to get it all done in one day. I can't see that happening. I've also got the last of the zucchini that I put back in the fridge that was still in good condition. We've been eating them with meals, but there's still some left. So rather than using the stuff that I have frozen, I may as well use the fresh stuff. So again, I'm just chunking it all up. We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9-ish of them. And then the last thing I will add will be some garlic. And then I've just got, I don't know, 10 of these big elephant garlic cloves. Same thing. Just gonna chunk them up and throw them in. Then I'm gonna let this sit for a while. So I'm gonna tidy this up and shape the sandwich bread into buns or whatever I decide to do with it. So I'm just going to finish this, get the mushrooms back in the fridge, the celery back in the fridge, any of these scraps fed to the animals, and that can be, and the rest in the compost. And I will just supervise the simmering of all these veggies. I want them nice and soft, so it's probably going to take 45 to an hour just to get the veggies soft, and then I will start adding my other ingredients. So I paused for lunch, and then the kids had quesadillas and stuff for lunch, and my dough has well and truly done what it needs to do. So I actually also realized that I was reading the wrong thing, and this is my brioche dough. I don't know why I didn't recognize it rather than my sandwich dough. So I'm definitely going to make this into some small rolls. So it's going to be sloppy because it's proofed, it's fallen. It now needs to be shaped and proofed again. Now the other thing is that all my veggies are well and truly softened, but I'm just a bit tied up. So I opened up one of the large tins of tomatoes. It's not the greatest angle for you, but you just have to deal with it. One of the big tins of tomatoes that I'm just going to throw in here for the moment, just to add some more liquid in here so nothing burns, and then I will come back to add everything else once I get these buns shaped. So that's all mixed up and it's got extra liquid in there on low so nothing burns. Alright, so I'm just going to tip out. Try not to get it stuck to my shirt. So now I got a bit of flour around to try and give myself a skin. So we just tuck that flour up and flick the dough over to give myself a bit of a skin to work with, because this dough is very loose, which is fine. Alright, now let me grab a tray. I might weigh these because it's going to be hard to judge the weight of them because the dough's so slack. So that's 96. So 90 odd is what I normally do, and just do the normal. We're going to create a ball and create some tension on them. That, and place them down. I'm not entirely sure what these are for yet. I was actually making sandwich bread for like lunch, and then time got away from me, and I don't know what I'm doing now, but bread rolls are always good. So I had planned on doing stroganoff for dinner. I don't have to do that tonight. Maybe we do some sort of hamburger. I don't know. But bread's good. Maybe I cook up some of those chicken tenders and we have the last of the lettuce and mayo and chicken on burger rolls, or the kids do. I could have it, Darryl could have it without the roll, whatever. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm just going to shape all of these, get them all on trays, and then they should be puffy pretty much within 15 minutes. And then I will bring you back when I'm moving on. Alright, I've got the oven preheating for the buns. We added 8 of these big 800 or 790 gram tins of diced tomatoes as well in there. I'm still going to assess. I do have 2 more of these tins, but I'd like to leave them on the shelf if possible. But I could add a couple of jars of passata or that sort of thing if I think it needs a little bit more liquid in there. We will see. But for the moment, it's simmering. I haven't added any spices or flavorings of any sort yet. This is just the veggies and tomato. Guys, I've got an egg with a little bit of water here to brush the top of these just to make them look pretty, and I'm going to stick some sesame seeds on them because I really like sesame seeds. As I said, I don't really know what's happening with them, and Darryl's not eating bread, but I might have one with some chicken on it or something with the kids, or I don't know what I'm doing yet. But I made bread rolls. Let me grab the sesame seeds. There we go. The other tray hasn't proved quite as much, but I think I'm going to get it sorted anyway because the oven's only just been turned on, so they can just finish their last little bit of proof in the oven and then cook off. And my kids really aren't fussy. So, and this dough was already pretty puffy even when I was shaping it, so should be fine. So same deal, bit of egg, bit of sesame seed, and I'll stick them in the oven, and then I will tidy up and decide what I'm doing next. Alright, seeing as I have the oven on, I made myself some notes for a chocolate cookie. So I tried those Quest frosted chocolate and birthday cake cookies recently. The keto ones that have only like 1.2 grams of carbs per cookie and 5 grams of protein or something, and I'd really like to try and replicate it. I don't know how I'm going to go, but they were like a cake mix cookie, which was really nice. So I'm just going to start off with a simple sort of almond flour chocolate cookie. Let's start with a small batch. So we'll do 150 grams of almond flour, and then I'm going to add, now a lot of baking likes the whey protein isolate and the mix of it. The whey protein, what do they call it? Concentrate, milk protein concentrate and whey protein isolate. I got this half price at the store when I was doing the last lot of groceries to give a go, because most baking recipes use these rather than like the vegan style ones that I buy, because they don't have the same benefits for baking. So what I'm going to do is, that's 2 scoops, which is 40 grams. I'm going to bring this up to 200 grams of total dry there. I'm going to put a little bit of baking powder, sort of half a teaspoon of baking powder. I might bump that a little bit to more of a teaspoon of baking powder. I'm going to put some cocoa in it to bump the chocolate. I'm going to put about 40 grams of this in here. Alright, and then I'm going to put some sweetener in, and we might go, I want these to be sweet because I want them as a replacement, because I'm struggling at the moment craving things. So I'm going to put 100 grams of this erythritol monk fruit blend in. What did that say? There we go. So 100 grams of sweetener. And then we want I'm going to put 2 eggs, and I'm going to put some butter in here as well. Now realistically I probably should have pulled the butter out to soften, so I might have to do a quick soften of that. I'm going to stick 2 eggs in here. And then about 120 of butter, but it would be better if it was softened. So I'm just going to, I've got that pot going, 120 grams of this in here, and I'll just rest it over the pot of sauce to soften up. Really probably should have done this in like my Thermomix bowl or something, and then the butter wouldn't have been such an issue. I can still do that. Alright, might transfer it all into a Thermomix rather than trying to mix it up. The dehydrator has been going for almost 3 hours, and it's pretty much almost done. I'll have to show you in a sec. Alright, transferred to the Thermomix, and that butter is slightly softened. What I can do is speed 10 seconds, and we'll have a look at it. My shirt is a mess this morning. Alright, and we've got this nice thick cake batter-esque almost, and I think they're little bits of like the honeycomb flavour out of the thing, bits of butter and stuff too, which I think is going to work quite well. Then I'm just going to scoop that out onto a baking tray to cook after the buns, and we will give that a go. Complete experimentation, but we will see how it goes. Now, dehydrator. So this is what it's looking like. Bring you down closer. So there we go. So this is after 3 hours, and it's, I don't know if you can hear that on my mic, but it's pretty much crushable, which is what I was looking for. I'll leave some in pieces like this because the boys like to eat it as is, but the rest of it was, the plan was to make mushroom salt. So there's some that are a little bit bendy in the middle, so I'm going to let it go for another half an hour, but I think that's pretty much done. So yeah, I'll leave that for about another half an hour, and then I will transfer that to something else. And I need a baking tray for those biscuits. Right, so let's get some tidying happening here. So size wise, the Quest ones are a significant size, and they're sort of like, they reminded me of a snowball. And now I don't think these will spread very much because they're nice and cold, and the plan is to coat them in some sugar-free chocolate rather than put chocolate chips. Like the recipes that I read, most of them had chocolate chips in them. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking to do them like this, and then melt some chocolate to either create a shell, or if I just want to be nice and simple, just do a drizzle, just to give that little extra decadence. But the idea is just to have them like snowball type things. Because the Quest, as I said, I really liked them. When they're on special, they're about $3 for 2 cookies. So whilst they're delicious, I can't beat it. I bought it at $3 for the 2 cookies just as a try, but it's not something that I can buy all the time. Alright, this is what I got out of it. So I got 13 out of it. It's not the greatest number, but it will work. I'm not going to flatten them. I'm going to see what it does, and bake them at a low temperature, sort of like 160 to 180, for 20 minutes maybe, and we'll see what they do. The hamburger buns are almost ready to come out, so once they're out, I'll throw these in. Here are the rolls. They look really good. So flies today are just, oh my god, it is horrific. So I'm going to get a tea towel to cover these up with out of the clean basket while they cool, and I'm going to leave the tomatoes to simmer for a little bit longer, and those biscuits just went in the oven, so we'll give them 15 minutes maybe, and then I'll check them. So I'm just going to go and find something to cover these buns with. This is 15 minutes, and I must say they look pretty promising. They're very, very soft though, and they'll firm up when they cool, but I think I'm going to give them another 5 minutes. So I think I'm going to go for the 20-minute mark, and then I'll call it good and we'll see how they are. But they look pretty good. Pureed the sauce with the stick blender, but I also added a bit of the homemade Worcestershire sauce that I had, a bit of balsamic vinegar as well, and some Vegeta and salt, and then just blended it further. And I'm just going to let it cool, and I'll can it up tomorrow. I might thin it out tomorrow. I'll have a look at the texture of it. But generally speaking, when I serve this, I put a jar of this and a jar of stock together anyway, when we do like pasta and stuff, or it gets added to the bolognese, which already has moisture in it. So I'll have a look, but it is pretty thick, so we will see. But it tastes really nice, so I'm just going to put that aside, let it cool, and I will can that tomorrow. I've got chicken in the oven, chicken tenders. We're going to try the Aldi ones this time in the oven to have with the burger buns as chicken burgers, and the biscuits turned out really nice. I'm really happy with them. They are very similar to the Quest ones. Sort of crumbly, pretty dry, sort of like cake mix cookies that I used to make when I used a cake mix to make cookies. So the texture isn't, it's what I was looking for. It was the same as the Quest stuff. I still think I could potentially cook them a little less maybe, and they might not be quite as dry, and there was the opportunity to put the bit of the chocolate drizzle over them maybe. The Quest ones are actually coated completely in chocolate, which probably counteracts the dry a bit, but I'm happy with the flavour of these. I might back off the sweetener next time though. So obviously stroganoff's not happening tonight. I don't know whether I said that. I decided to do those burger buns and use them tonight. So I've got the chicken in the oven, as I said, and I'm just going to make up a quick mayo to go with it. So 3 egg yolks, all the normal, mustard, lemon juice, bit of cowboy candy. So 3 egg yolks, splash of lemon, a dollop of cowboy candy. That's not cowboy candy. That is a jam of some sort. Alright, actually got cowboy candy this time. Some mustard, pinch of salt, and then blend it up with the olive oil. Leave it nice and thick for dipping chicken in or for putting on the rolls. And I think there is some lettuce left in the fridge as well, and there is tomatoes if they want those, and then I'll show you the end. Alright, I'm going to have one of these, so I'm just going to make it up. Everything else is on the table for the kids. Going to generous, I like, a little bit of bun with my mayo, as Darryl likes to always give me shit about.
Done with love.
And then the kids hanging that. I'm going to have some lettuce. And I'm going to have some tomato with a bit of salt, and then I'm going to cut up some chicken to have on my bun. So we did these are the Aldi tenders. They seem all right. I'm going to cut them open. Actually, I think, I don't know. They all seem to have that processed chicken texture, which is not actually my favorite, but everyone else seems to like it. So, you know, so I'm just going to do that as a burger. And we also got the, you can take the rest. We also got these are the cauliflower, crumbed cauliflower pieces that we got free for the, you can probably have that too if you need it, but I'll put it on my plate and then I'll, the crumbed cauliflower pieces that I got for free from Woolworths. So that, and then drink, and I'll show you the kids' table. Just served it all up on the table for them all to serve their own. Why is that on the table and not on your plate?
It wouldn't work if it was on my plate.
Why not?
I don't know.
So they're all just making their own burgers, and then they've got some extra chicken as well. Sonnet's picture perfect burger, apparently. Alrighty, it is next morning and we're doing the sauce. So I did add 2 jars of passata to it just to thin it out a little bit because I just didn't want it as thick as it was. And the kids have taste tested it and they're happy with it. It's still a little bit chunky, but that's fine. Everything's broken down enough that they're happy with it. So now I'm just going to fill jars. I'm going to use 27s, Fowler's 27s, which are 850 mils, I think it is. So just under a quart per jar. And I like to use these jars for this. I find that they're a good size for this sort of thing. And all I'm going to do is fill them up. I'm not sure how many jars it's going to fill. Sonnet washed me a dozen and some lids, but I may need more. I always find it hard to tell how much we'll need, and I'm going to pressure can these. So I'm filling them just to the shoulder of the jars because I'm going to pressure can them because I didn't measure out my non-acidic ingredients. So that way I don't have to worry about the ratios of tomato to all the other vegetables. I can just do whatever I want, and to a degree, of course.
We're gonna have
and pressure can it. And the kids have requested ravioli for dinner. So we buy the frozen beef ravioli and then use some sort of sauce on it. And they've decided that they would like this pasta veggie sauce in ravioli for dinner tonight. So, and they might have some leftover rolls they could have with it as well. Have some garlic bread-esque type stuff if they don't eat them all for lunch.
I was actually going to ask if I could have one.
Yep, you can have.
Like after the house, some sausage.
Or you could have bacon and eggs on them like breakfast rolls or something if you wanted. So I'm just going to get them all filled. All right, I've filled the jars. What have we got? 3, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 jars. And we've got a big, this is like a 2-litre container full of sauce as well that the kids will have over dinner and whatever else. So they wanted me to keep some out for that. So we're going to stick that in the fridge. And then I'll get moving on the rest of these jars. It seems to have sealed all right. So now I will get moving on these. So I'm going to get some vinegar to clean the rims of them. All right, actually I need rings as well. So size 3 rings. Alrighty, now I've got a cloth and I've got white vinegar and I've got flies, lots and lots of flies, which is really frustrating. But anyway, so we're going to pressure can these. So I'm going to, and they've got lots of onion and garlic in them. So I'm going to pressure can them for 45 minutes to make sure that that is long enough time to cater for the ingredient in the batch that requires the longest canning time, which is onions and mushrooms. So I'm pretty sure it's 45 minutes. I will double check before I start my timer, but I'm pretty sure it's 45 minutes for onions. So it might be 40. I'll double check. So I've cleaned the rims with vinegar. Now I'm placing the rubber rings on the jars because because these are Fowler's jars and that's the way it works. I just give them a quick wipe with the vinegar as well, just in case there's any grease on my hands. And then Sonnet washed lids for me, so I've got these. And again, I just run a bit of vinegar around the inside of the rings just to make sure there's no grease that's going to affect the seal, and then we clip them. Do you want to see if you can find more clips anywhere for me? Because I'm probably going to run out the shorter clips. So I double clip my Fowler's jars when I pressure can. I go through it most videos that I do this sort of thing, but Fowler's says you only put a single clip on, but they also only have guidelines for Fowler's or water bath canning. I find that if I don't double clip for pressure canning, I have failures. So I double clip for any sort of pressure canning. I need to get the water in the canner warm before I add them. So I'm going to bring the temperature up in the canner to match the temperature of the product in the jars before I put any of them in there. So I'm just going to keep going for the moment. They are supposed to come back to this container when taken off, but they don't always. Sometimes they end up in our miscellaneous lids buckets and things like that. So I probably will have to run both canners for this many jars too, but we will see. I got the new weight for the buffalo that I lost. I got the new one in the mail the other day, so I can run both if need be. All right, now I don't know if we can see very well here, but I've got both canners going. So I've got my Presto here and my buffalo here. I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 jars in the buffalo, and then I'm going to put 6 in the Presto, and that was all the jars. I possibly could have fit an extra one here, an extra one here if I didn't. So if I wasn't saving some of that sauce for the kids, but that's fine. Now I've had to move the racks around because the kids can't find the ones I want, and there is a hook that the racks are supposed to be hung on, but they haven't been. But anyway, so I'm just topping the water up a little bit in there because I've got the steam canner rack in the bottom of that, and I've got a pizza rack in front, top at the bottom of this one. Now the only downfall with the Fowler's jars is that they're taller, so you can't actually double stack them because there's just not enough room. Whereas in the buffalo, I can double stack quart jars, but that's fine. I use these jars interchangeably. So I'm just going to give the seal and everything a clean on this one because this one's warmed up. This one, the temperature isn't quite high enough for me to put the jars in yet. So whilst the outsides of my pots are dirty, before I run them, I give the seal a wash in some warm water. I clean the inside where the seal goes just to make sure it makes a good seal, because there's nothing worse than trying to get it up to pressure and it just will not go up to pressure, and most of that is just a leak around a seal somewhere. So I always tighten my little valve that pops up at the base of it and check and give my seals a wash, and then do that. So this water is nearly warm enough. Because the product in the jar is hot, we need the water in the canner to be hot as well. I've already cleaned the lid, the seal and stuff for this one. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, this one will probably come up to pressure before this one, so I'll just run 2 timers because this is a larger capacity. And I'm going to, I forgot to check. Let me double check my canning time. So onions are 40 and mushrooms are 45. So because there's plenty of onions, mushrooms and stuff in here, we're going to do it for 45. So we're going to bring it up to pressure. We'll do the steam. We'll be spurting solidly for 10 minutes. Put the weights on when it comes up to pressure, which for me, I use a 15-pound weight, or we need to be at 11 pounds because of our altitude if you're going by gauge, but I use 15-pound weights because that just makes my life easier. And we bring them up to dance. So I'll show you some of the other stuff as it comes along, but that's done. let me get the lid on and I'll figure out what else I need to do. All right, I forgot about the dehydrator yesterday. I turned it off because everything was looking pretty good and I just wanted to let it cool a bit and see if if the consistency was still good. And I totally forgot and left it all in there overnight. Now, obviously, a dehydrator is not completely airtight, so some moisture's got back in there. So I'm going to turn that back on for probably an hour and take that last bit of moisture out before I have to let it cool enough to put it in jars so that it doesn't, create humidity in the jars, but not so cool that it has the opportunity to absorb moisture again. But it's a little bit too flexible this morning. So I've just turned that back on for an hour. I was really happy with the chocolate biscuits. I had some with coffee after dinner last night. Darryl finds them a bit dry. I'm going to try another batch and I'm going to add another egg and see if we can get them a little more cakey. I also could add a few I've got some sugar-free white chocolate chips that I could add because I originally was going to put like a drizzle or a coating on them, but I just don't think it needs it. But a couple of chocolate chips in there might keep it a bit more moist too. I am going to cut back the sweetener a little bit too. The protein powder probably has some sweetener in it too, and it just doesn't need to be that sweet. It's lovely and chocolatey. I'm really happy with them. I think that I found, considering it's almond flour, they taste like cookies to me, and that's what I was looking for. It's just something that felt like a cookie. I did the nutritional panel. It worked out about 1.5 grams of net carbs per cookie if it's done into 13. I think I could make them a little bit smaller, quite easily make them a little bit smaller, and maybe hit a 1 gram of net carb per biscuit, especially with the reduced sweetener in there. Not that sweetener is your net carbs, but extra egg will bump protein. Protein's not super high because there's not a huge amount of protein powder spread between all of them, but an extra egg might help with that. I possibly could bump the protein powder. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with it as a base recipe though. I need to cut back the sweetness just a little bit. Darryl finds it a little dry, so I'll try adding that extra egg, but I'm really happy with them. And I haven't been happy with nearly everything I've made keto-wise, other than the baked cheesecakes, which I also need to make another batch of. Darryl adores those baked cheesecakes, so I need to do that. I'm not going to do it today though, because I have to find all the tins and their bases and stuff before I do that. So that can wait. What else needs to be done? I did pull a 5 kilo bag of chicken thighs out of the freezer yesterday because Apollo has requested butter chicken, so we've run out of butter chicken on the shelf. So I can my butter chicken. And it has run out, so I do need to do that again, and I possibly could mix up the sauce mix today, marinate the chicken. I'll have a look. It might not be defrosted enough anyway, but I've got the canners running today. I prefer to not do 2 loads in a row. It just takes too long. I don't know what the time is. Again, my watch, hopefully, Darryl's at the post office at the moment. Hopefully my watch charger cord is in town at the moment because I'm really missing my watch. It is already lunchtime, so by the time these get up to pressure, you got half an hour to 45 minutes to get them up to pressure. To get them to the point of being able to start the pressure. It could take half an hour to get steady stream of steam, and then after that half an hour you also need to then bring it up to pressure, and then it has to sit at pressure for 45 minutes, and then it takes sort of another 45 minutes to come back off pressure before you can even open the lids. So I don't tend to do 2 batches in a day. 2 canner loads, yes, and maybe I will one day invest in an extra canner as well so I can run 3 at a time maybe. But I haven't been canning a whole lot prior to this because we haven't had the excesses. So that's the beauty of what we've done with the reducing of the grocery time, is that I shall have excesses to can. So I've got all that extra chicken that we're not going to eat in the 4-week period that I can get up on the shelf. And then that can be eaten at other times as well. And they love the butter chicken, and they either have wraps or I make flatbread or whatever with them. Or they have rice, whatever they want with it, but they like the butter chicken. So I need to make that again. I've got that beef birria on the shelf that we're really happy with, but I will make another batch once this one's out with a little bit spicier. We'll have all this pasta sauce, which can be used just as is. So tonight they're going to have ravioli as the request. So all we do is boil up the ravioli and then add this sometimes with a dash of coconut cream and nutritional yeast in it, and make it as a creamy tomato sauce over ravioli. They really like that. And ravioli, I buy the Woolworths one, and it's I want to say $6.50 or something for a pack. And now that there's only the 5 kids, 1 pack is enough with a little bit of a side, which is nice. We used to have to cook 2 packs when there was the extra person and they didn't have sides with it, but that was how it worked. But with just the 5 of them, 1 pack is enough, so that makes it a bit of a more optimal cheap meal to use. So there's that. I don't know what else I want to get done today, so I'm going to leave it there for the moment, and I'll be back with all the jars as they come through. So I'm just bringing those canners up, and I don't have it on full heat. We're bringing them up nice and slowly, which helps with siphoning. So we're bringing the temperature up nice and slow until it hits the steam, and then we'll go from there. Alrighty, all done. So the both cantaloups, they finished. I let them sit in the canners for a while before I pulled them out, so they're not bubbling anymore. But there's no, I actually thought there would be a bit of siphoning because the boys actually turned the canner off mid-cycle and I had to turn it back on, but everything looks good. It doesn't appear to be any siphoning. The water in the bottom of the canners is clear, so hopefully that's all good. So this is going to be a significant amount of meals on the shelf to be used in a variety of ways, and the kids, as I said, are using the leftovers for dinner tonight with the ravioli.
15 meals.
So part of the canning process is letting the jars sit for 24 hours post doing. So you don't take lids off, you don't take clips off or rings or anything off until 24 hours after they've been done, just to make sure they've got plenty of time to finish the sealing process. So tomorrow morning I will take all the clips off, test all the lids on all the jars, and then we will give the jars a rinse and stick them on the pantry shelves for using. Alright, so I'm going to leave today's video there. I'm about to do dinner. I've got ravioli in the stove and I'm going to heat up the sauce for them, and I'm done. That's it. The stuff else that I was going to get done today. We were putting furniture together, so we got the IKEA delivery on Wednesday, so we've been slowly putting like 1 bookcase together per day. Eventually we'll get there. I do have to put the dehydrator stuff back in jars though, mind you. So all this has dried wonderfully. Let me aim you down. All this has dried wonderfully. We're in that spot of shadowing again at the moment. Let me turn the light. Might be a little bit better. And it's all crumbly. So I actually crumbled some of it into dust over Darryl's steak at lunchtime today. So I'm going to grab a jar so I can quickly get this in there before it absorbs more moisture from the night air. So I'm going to do all that, and then that'll be the last thing I do for the day. So that's it from me, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye guys. Just coming back quickly to say, the goal with dehydrated items is that you want as much of a full jar as you can. The less headspace, the better. But you also want enough room that you condition your dehydrated goods. So over the next couple of days, you give them a shake and you make sure you don't throw the jar around. You make sure that everything is getting, just moved around in the jars. So that is the jar, a quart jar of mushrooms out of the dehydrator. It's not too bad. We will powder this for mushroom salt, which means there'll be a whole lot less once it's powdered, but that's not too bad. Quart jar. And then we did have the zucchini. So I did do the chips of zucchini, which dehydrated quite well. They're quite crisp. And then still those shreds, which I don't feel like they dehydrated as well as the slices, so I definitely think slices are the way to go with that. So just coming back to say that, but I'm just going to throw all this into probably a pint jar.